Welcome to the Time of the Reason podcast show. We're not looking for ratings. We are not here to support and to create sensationalism. We are not here to entertain. We are here to give due diligence to the pressing human, economic, environmental, political, and social issues that affect humankind. We are here to promote thinking. Now, more than ever, is the time to revive reason. Unless we do so, humankind is riding a one-way runaway train into oblivion. Think about it. We must think. Thank you for listening again to another episode of the Time of the Reason podcast show. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of Time of the Reason podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Dan Ploger, partner in conversational crime. We've got another subject that people are talking about. Everybody knows who the governor of Florida is, Gavin Newsom, and his antics. And some of you may have seen the debate the other day, him against Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. And, you know, it doesn't take much to give due diligence to some of the stuff that was coming out of his mouth. And I'm going to say it before we even talk about what this subject, crane lover, narcissist, or something else. The guy was lying through his teeth. I mean, we talk about critical thought, logic, and reason, and common sense. And you know, I know that Dan and you, we've looked at body language before, but the arrogance, the narcissistic body language, the facts and figures that were coming out of this guy's mouth were total lies and fabrication. And I think that when you tell lies or you get so comfortable with it, it comes so eloquently out of your mouth that people just believe it because you believe it. So if Gavin Newsom says something, people just believe it because of it's so natural. And you know, you can read this too. Go to the bookstore and look up dishonesty. Look up lies and how to spot lies and why people lie. And we've all told fibs. Let's not, you know, I don't carry a sainthood mantra here, but when you're in a position as the governor, a very important position of the state of California, largest state in the lower 48 or 50, man, it's despicable. And so I'm going to open this up to you, Dan, here in a second. But, you know, so Gavin Newsom, what the heck was he doing in China not long ago? I think it was a little over a month ago. The guy was mugging for the camera every chance he got. He mowed over a Chinese boy while showing off playing basketball. That was weird. And then he's walking on this boardwalk at a nature preserve, and he sees this crane. Looks like a sandhill crane. I don't even know what it is. But the guy literally had an entourage of Chinese photographers behind him and an interpreter. See that blonde-haired lady, an interpreter. And he was just mesmerized by this bird walking down the boardwalk. I mean, what the heck are we spending time? Why are we viewing something like this? And, you know, so the question today is Gavin Newsom a crane lover? Does he really like shorebirds the way that he was gawking over this bird? Is he just an outright narcissist, or is there something else going on here with China? Go ahead, Dan. You know, floodgates are open. Let's get down to brass tacks. What the hell's this guy up to?
Well, coming from Florida, it's not unusual to see a stork or a crane or whatever that bird is. Shame on us for not knowing that, but apparently Gavin doesn't know it either. But it's not unusual for us to see something like that. But I would imagine with all the starving homeless people that around San Francisco and Los Angeles, you probably wouldn't see too many cranes. They've probably already become Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, but you're probably right. You know, I mean, he did clean it up when Xi Jinping showed up not long ago.
He got rid of all the birds.
All the birds, picked up all the poop, ran all the homeless people out, you know, spiffed it up. He was, you know, what would they call that? Power washing every sidewalk in the areas that the Chinese president was going to come down. Then we saw a majority of Chinese flags on U.S. soil.
No American
Unbelievable.
flags.
Unbelievable. What the
No.
hell is Gavin Newsom up to? What's he doing? What is this guy doing?
Well, let's talk about critical thinking. We all saw that Gavin Newsom 6 months ago was at the White House on an unannounced visit when Joe Biden was out of town, by the way, and it was pegged by the press corps as a drape measuring session at the White House. So, in preparation for Gavin's appointment to the White House. So, we all have seen this coming. This is a very not so secret by the Democrats to run a shadow campaign against the president of the United States, who's a Democrat. So this all makes for some really interesting thoughts, but I'm not sure that I don't think anybody outside of the state of California has a favorable opinion of the state of California. I've never met anybody like that yet.
Yeah, I haven't either. And, he sat there and he was talking about how many people were moving into California. And that's not what the facts and figures are saying. I mean, they've lost some big time heavy hitter corporate entities that did business out there. That a lot of people have moved out of there. And I bet you if you were to ask anybody out on the street, if you could live in any state that besides the state you're living in, I'll bet you that California is not in the top 5.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be. It's got a horrible reputation. They've done such a miserable job managing their forests that every year we have wildfires followed by floods. And of course, the Democrats blame it on climate change, but the fact is, it's poor forest management. And the power distribution system is so antiquated and inefficient that whatever it is, Pacific Power and Light or whatever the company is, has not upgraded their equipment. So they get in strong winds, they get sparks that start fires. And it's just the California is an example of one of the most beautiful states endowed with the greatest amount of natural resources and natural beauty, perhaps short of Alaska. But it has just been ruined by the politicians who have made it so it's unaffordable to live there, have made it so the non-productive are the ones that are rewarded. And politicians that live in a bubble where they expect us to believe every word that comes out of their mouth. But as you've so eloquently pointed out, the debate was just full of mistruths and misstatements intended to deceive.
Yeah, well said. And, you talk about forest management, he was railing on the state of Florida. Of course, you're in Florida. I lived in Florida for many, many years, and he was railing on that state. And, we talk about forest management. Well, there's lightning strikes all the time in Florida, which cause fires. But because they have a really robust forest management system with controlled burns, periodically, the fire damage is always kept to a minimal. But you're right, Dan. I mean, they have $1 million homes burning all the time out there because they can't seem to get their management down just right. And then you talk about the Democrats and the things that were going on during the COVID lockdown. Here's this guy, getting some PPP money for one of his buddies who ran the French Laundry. I mean, millions of dollars. Not sure if they paid that back, but he's out with his friends having a gourmet dinner. Well, the citizens of California by mandate were locked down. And then you look at Nancy Pelosi, at that time was the Speaker of the House. She's out enjoying a nice haircut when all the haircutting places were shut down and all the people had to cut their hair at home. People using a bowl and in a DIY, do it yourself haircuts. What kind of person, just forget the politics, but what kind of person says do as I say, not as I do. I mean, come on. That right there to me is bad character. Let's just say what it is. Who does he think he is, or who does she think she is, or any politician to tell you how to run your life? I saw one the other day, at the climate summit, you know, where they're telling us that they're telling the West and primarily America quit eating beef, but yet they've got 75% of the menu items in all the restaurants that are feeding these people at this global climate change convention meats on the menu. What kind of person does that? I know we've digressed, but what kind of person, a narcissist, obviously, but talk a little bit about that, Dan. Tells you how to live your life, but yet they do, and a hypocrite. But what's up with that?
Well, I think that in this a common theme of all politicians, that they think they have power over you when they have it exactly wrong. The customer is the American citizen, and they serve the customer. We've got it all backwards. And we set it up so that we didn't want to have a monarchy. Have you ever seen the president or the vice president's cavalcade driving down the street with what, 9 or 10 black SUVs? We treat these people like kings, and it was never intended that way. And I think one way to straighten things out would be to take these perks away, the jets and what have you, from our people that are our politicians that are abusing their lives and our lives by the way you say, by do as I say, not as I do. So
it's interesting because I've looked at the cabinet members of this current administration, and man, this has got to be, in my opinion, everybody's got an opinion, right? But if you look at the facts and history, this has got to be one of the worst cabinets ever assembled in the history of the United States of America. There's absolutely no leadership in any position in that cabinet, zero. And it's almost like every position leader has been selected to destroy that particular department
yes,
than to improve upon it and leave a lasting legacy.
right.
This is it's embarrassing to be an American these days.
Two of the cabinet level members are going to be impeached. Mayorkas and the Secretary of the Attorney General, name escapes me. Garland.
Merrick Garland.
Yeah, Garland. And so, I mean, that says something. And then the gall that President Biden has to say that, well, gee, things are getting back. We're getting bad. We're getting about 8,000 people a day coming across the border. And he puts it out there that he's willing to negotiate. Well, I maintain that's not the president's prerogative. It is not his prerogative to allow an invasion of 8,000 foreign people of military age who we don't know, to allow them into this country. And President Biden should be impeached for
failing to do his duty,
for bribery and failure to uphold his oath of office. So he has been the most disgraceful and despicable people that have ever held a position in the White House. And after Woodrow Wilson, that's quite a statement.
Yeah, and the thing is the lack of courage, because everybody's got this fear of cancel culture. But I believe that the power does belong with the people, as you say. These people do work for us, and they can't pull the wool over. You can only have that wool pulled over for so long. Due diligence, critical thought, which is what we talk. Logic and reason and common sense. They'll sit there and tell a bold-faced lie, and your intuition is saying something's not right, like the smoke and mirrors with his son Hunter's recent indictment. Boy, that was crafted. The reality is that he was influence peddling. Joe Biden, the vice president at the time, knew all about what was going on, because I assume he had more brain cells than he's got now. but he knew what was going on, and the guy was getting paid. And why?
And he knew he was obligated to defend the Ukraine because of Burisma payments. Wow, that's awesome. That only cost the American taxpayer $100 billion.
You know, so you talk about greed and graft and corruption, and I actually was watching something. Sammy the Bull Gravano, an old mafia guy, and people said, "Well, you can't give any mafia people any credence," but the mafia had a code, and whether you know, of course, they were criminals and they were doing different things, but they lived by a code, and there were certain things that the mafia would not do. And I was listening to Sammy the Bull, and he was just scratching his head, basically saying, if you read between the lines, that Joe Biden would never have made it in the mafia. That's saying something. What it's saying is the guy couldn't have passed the muster. In other words, the mafia would have taken care of their own because somebody wasn't following this code, which had a high standard, of course, a bunch of criminals. But imagine a criminal saying that this guy would not even last in your criminal organization because he did things that criminals don't even do. That's pretty astounding to me. And again, I know we're probably on a list somewhere. They'll probably silence us. And if they ever do take full control, Dan and you will probably be shipped off to a gulag or some re-education camp. But I think it's time to have these conversations, to be honest, and to put your money where your mouth is. This guy is not fit to lead. Gavin Newsom isn't fit to lead. A lot of these people aren't. And where are the brave leaders that they're going to step up for the American people? Where are they? Donald Trump did, and you found out where that got him. You know, he wasn't a career politician. He called a spade a spade. And look, they're using the DOJ, attorney generals around the country, Georgia, I think, and in New York, and they're subverting the rule of law. They're weaponizing the legal system, making a mockery out of the judiciary. And there's nobody with balls big enough to stop this sham. I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, and it's pretty amazing to me the Supreme Court hasn't intervened in this lawfare that's going on. Clearly, these are nuisance lawsuits, and the people that are perpetrating the lawsuits should be held financially liable and responsible to repay the states, Georgia, New York, to repay the states the money that they've wasted, that the taxpayers have provided to them for their safekeeping and good judgment. And they've done nothing but just violate that. And it's a shame, but we're in a war, and we're in a war of ideas, and I guess they're prepared to fight with ludicrosy and idiocracy, and I think that maybe we need to be the same.
Yeah, so that's a good point, Dan. And I would say to anybody listening, you know, go to your local library, go online, Google it, right? Look up how to spot a liar. Look it up. And then take some of that criteria, because you're educating yourself, you're gaining knowledge, which is something they don't want you to have. And when you watch a politician give a speech, or just watch his body language, listen to what he's saying, write down the facts, and you'll be we weren't astonished because we are critical thinkers, but you might be astonished at what you learn just by knowing a few body cues. Let me tell you something. Gawking with a stork, that's neither honest or dishonest. That's just dorky. And to waste time on that is even ridiculous. I call stuff like this, like you just said, Dan, idiocracy, smoke and mirrors, taking your eye off the ball. Gavin Newsom has no business being in China and has no business being the governor of the state of California if he's going to tell bold-faced lies. There's just, and I'll say it, you want to cancel me? Big deal. Cancel me. Cancel me for using my gray matter to figure some things out on my own. Any final thoughts, Dan, on Gavin Newsom or what we've talked about today?
No, I think we've given him more time than he deserves. I don't think anybody other than his immediate cabinet, have a favorable opinion of Gavin Newsom. And I think that when the polls come out, they're going to be horribly shocked. But of course, critical thinkers, beware when you hear the polls, the first polls, because I doubt very seriously that you're going to be seeing objective numbers.
No, and I read a long time ago, it might have been you that mentioned it to me. If there's an electrical wire hooked up to a voting booth,
Yeah.
There's a chance that that vote might not be
what you think.
It might not be what you think, and there might be a glitch in the system. Vote for this candidate, and that's 10 votes.
Yeah.
Vote for this candidate, and that's minus 10 votes.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Pay no attention to the wire underneath the voting machine.
Absolutely. So we want to thank listeners again for sticking with us over the last few months for the change that we made to Mind Matters, and I want to thank you, Dan, for the lively conversation, for the good and relevant points that you make, and hopefully the people that are listening can take some of our conversations and turn it into something positive for a change. Appreciate you, man, and I look forward to the next conversation on the Time of the Reason podcast show.
Thanks, John. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Time of the Reason podcast show. Now it's time to think. Logic and reason work. It's only common sense. Do your part.